should not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me.
Good evening and welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast in association with the Scottish Rugby blog. I'm Craig Manson, I'm hosting tonight, and as per Edinburgh's season this year, I'll whimper into the night at the end of this podcast. Joining me tonight is the king of rugby fashion, Rory Baldwin. How are you doing, Rory?
When you said king there, I thought, right, well, what's Jonny the king of? Surely he's not coming to me first. I'm very good, thank you. How are you? I'm
good, thanks. Good to see you. And as giggling away at the bottom there and waiting on his introduction is the not so secret fanboy and love child of Johnny Matthews, Johnny McGinty. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Good to see you.
So you can follow us on Twitter or X if you're down with the kids. It's at Scottish Rugby Pod. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Twitch. You can watch us on Facebook, etc., etc., etc. You can also join us on www.patreon.com/the Scottish Rugby Podcast for the price of 2 Doner meat and chili sauce pies from Stevens, the bakers, per month. You can get extra content, an extra podcast, an hour of podcasting at the end. Oh, there's already an objection.
That is a fantastic pie.
That is really a fantastic pie, and I can't see any more than that, apart from the fact that they're just 2 doors down from my work. So it's as everyone can see, I'm a big lad, and unfortunately they're adding to my bigness and my bigliest bigness. If you want any, you can also, if you go with our Patreon and become a patron of the pod, you get access to our super secret Facebook page, and you can join in all the conversation there. Currently, it's mainly about Glasgow at the moment because Edinburgh are nowhere to be seen at this moment in time. So, gentlemen, are we ready for a chat, an evening of chat and discussion about many, many different things within Scottish rugby?
I don't see why not.
Johnny's reading, so he's just.
I'm trying to sort out the. I'm trying to sort out the super secret Patreon stream because it doesn't seem to be working. But I will do it as we go.
Super secret on the super secret YouTube page.
It's so super secret.
It's on the super secret broadcasting. It's on the super secret Facebook page.
Oh, you got it back on.
I'm working on it now. It's back on.
Okay.
I'm in.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to the news quickly. So currently, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion about Edinburgh and Glasgow in the free to air pod, and then head over to our patrons, and our patrons, we're going to have a discussion about the Scotland squad that's been announced today, and who's there, who's not, and what the purpose of it will be, and whether they're going to get pushed by Chile. Or we'll see what happens. So, on to the news. George Turner is off to, finally, the worst kept secret in Scottish rugby. George Turner is off to Japan. Going for the money, or deciding to go and actually take himself a rest and play a small amount of rugby and get paid a huge amount of money for it?
I think probably the latter. I mean, he's basically been eating 3 meals a day in Wagamama since about December, so we all knew that it was coming. I don't think he's just chasing the money, because I think he's young enough that he probably still would be featuring for Scotland fairly regularly, injury dependent, obviously, because he has put his body through a lot. I think he maybe has just made the choice that because of all the damage that he's done to himself, he's maybe just going to take it a little bit easier, play with some big names at a lower level, and rake some cash in, and fair play to him. Like, if it was an opportunity that was going, I think I would take it.
Absolutely. And Rory, Gregor Townsend today or this week has been, basically said that he thinks it's going to be a struggle for George Turner to come back and play for Scotland while he's playing in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Japanese, the top league runs through the middle of the Six Nations. So it's going to be club versus country. I don't suppose they won't be observing the Northern Hemisphere international windows. I wouldn't have thought.
No.
So it's. I would imagine he would have known that though before he signed it. I mean, Townsend said in the week that the negotiations were sort of going on during the Six Nations. They were aware that George was looking at this as an option, and so he would have known that it was going to probably call time on his international career. I mean, he's 31, something like that.
Or
so it's not.
I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how long. I mean, if you signed a 2-year deal or something like that, 2 years, he could conceivably still be. But I think that's, and we'll come on to that later. That's why there are so many young hookers in the Scotland summer squad. They're looking to find out who the next lot coming through are, because they're aware that there's the cohort of hookers at the moment is quite old.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll come back to you, Rory. Jamie Ritchie has been crowned the URC's turnover king this week. Quite a performance from Jamie. 22 turnovers in the season. His nearest competitor was Seamus Hurley Langton of Connacht at 18. Jamie, maybe letting everyone know that he's still a force.
Yeah. Don't know if anyone watches Married at First Sight Australia, but his man bun reminded me of the very objectionable Jack that was on the most recent season of that. I'm not sure that his hair is a force of any sort, but I think we all kind of get carried along by whichever bright young thing is going to be the next big bright young thing in Scottish back row play, or even Scottish open side play. Rory Darge has obviously attracted a lot of attention. He's kind of been fast tracked into captaincy, things like that, and it did coincide with Jamie Ritchie going off the boil a bit, but I think he's still got heaps to offer Scotland, and I think we'll probably see that on the tour. I think he'll be right up for it.
Yeah, he's definitely saved Edinburgh's blushes on a few times this season as well. So well done to Jamie Ritchie. And Jonny, your fanboy crush, Jonny Matthews, URC top try scorer with an impressive 14 tries in the season, 2 ahead of his nearest rival, Akker van der Merwe, who is also a hooker, funnily enough. And I would say, let's just say the Van der Merwe household will be a wash of a certain smaller brother, telling his bigger brother that he can score more tries than him in the season.
Yeah, too right as well. I think it's not exactly a shock, that we get to the semi-finals this weekend, and I'd say probably the 4 teams with the most effective attacking mauls are the teams that are in the semis. And the fact that Johnny Matthews and Aker van der Merwe are the top 2 try scorers kind of ties in with that pretty well. It has been Glasgow's big weapon all season. It's been really successful for the Bulls as well, and Munster and Leinster are never shy of that sort of thing. So it's just an indication that a really successful attacking maul and capitalising on some of the more interesting URC refereeing decisions and getting penalties kicked into the corner is the way to go to win games.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be get a penalty, kick into the corner, maul it over. It seems to be a very, very good way of winning games, or at least scoring tries. And Glasgow certainly are very, very good at it. Another bit of news: the English press have finally realised that Finn Russell isn't mercurial or flaky or anything like that. He is actually quite a good player and worth the money.
Is anyone really worth the money?
I think if anyone is, Finn probably is, because Bath were 12th 2 years ago, and now they've just played in a final, and they have brought in I don't want to say it was all Finn. They've brought in some really good players. They've done well to kind of sweep up from the teams that have gone out of business in England. So somebody like Ollie Lawrence coming in is a massive deal, but it was mostly Finn, and they've gone from 12th to 2nd in 2 years, and most of that has to do with the fact that Finn has played incredibly well for them this year, and I have enjoyed all season watching English journalists discovering that actually he is pretty good.
Yeah, Rory seems to be, he seems to, especially with the backup of his fellow Bath players, he is showing everyone that not only is he this phenomenal 10, but he's actually quite a good influence on the team. Yeah,
I mean, I think you pretty much saw it ever since he had the kid. He's a lot more level-headed in his approach to, I presume, life, but mostly the evidence we've got is his approach on the rugby field. And I think he was a great choice. It might have seemed like a big risk throwing that amount of money, but actually, because sort of Finn 2.0 is a steadying hand and he can do all the crazy stuff, it's ideal to bring a bit of box office to the Premiership. And I mean,
you say that the kids made him level-headed, but have you seen the video of him carrying the kid round in one arm round the wreck and then catching a beer that gets thrown from the stands with the other hand and chopping it? So he's not that level-headed with the child.
Yeah, I mean, level-headed as sort of rugby frat boys get.
Rugby frat boy. I've not heard that one for a while. That's fabulous. Certainly, Ben Spencer and Cam Redpath outside him aren't going to be cats at the rave. That's for sure.
So they're old man and dad dancing in a marquee somewhere.
Yeah. You were going to say something, Johnny?
No, I was just going to say that that has been the thing with Bath, is that most of this season they've seemed to manage to balance really exciting attacking with being quite sensible and stoic where they need to be. Like, there were periods of the final on Saturday where Bath's attack looked amazing, and it was lines coming from all angles, Finn on the late delays and the dummies and steps inside, and it was quick and it was really exciting. But then there were also long periods where you thought they just looked like a sensible and quite serious rugby team. I think they have found a really good balance. They were very unlucky on Saturday, but I think because Saints were so good all season, they still deserve to win.
Yeah, I mean, they're even smart enough to play on the reputation of Finn Russell, and when they sent him one way and when you're thinking, okay, Finn's going to get this, he's cross kicking going right, and actually he was just running a decoy, and Spencer did the cross kick over to the left, and they ended up scoring a try, I think. It's almost like they're they're playing off his reputation as the one that you have to keep an eye on. And that just makes it doubly difficult because then you pay attention to everyone else and you take your eye off him for a second and bad things happen to your defence.
Absolutely, yeah. And finally, on the news front, the Blazers are struggling a little bit at the SRU. Scottish Rugby finding it difficult to replace Mark Dodson as their latest candidate for chief executive has had a change of heart. So they have currently no chief executive and also still no performance director, Jonny.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily massively worried because as much as they knew that this was coming, it's been the Dodson show for quite a long time. He did kind of wind it up a little bit early. I'm in a way quite pleased that they're taking their time and they've obviously got a list of people who they actually want. They're not just going to just grab somebody. There is obviously a limit to the amount of time you can go without people in the senior role, so they're going to have to do something sooner rather than later, but I don't think it's quite panic button time just yet.
Yeah, Rory, do you think do you think John McGuigan is asking too much? Is he maybe looking for someone on a cut price, seeing as he's having to recuperate some of Dodson's?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Looking at the piece on the offside line earlier, they had their prime candidate for Dodson's role in about April. They offered him or her the job or they got an acceptance in around May. So they were just getting set to announce it imminently, and then they had a change of heart and decided not to take the role. So that, I guess, I'm sure they have a shortlist, so they would presumably just go to the next name or two on the shortlist and see who else is. There might be somebody else available that wasn't before, but I think that's obviously going to take negotiations and all that kind of stuff for a big ass role like that. The article suggested the performance director, they were kind of going to make that part of the CEO's new remit to appoint them, but they actually kind of know who that is going to be. So they might announce the performance director of elite performance or whatever we're calling it, might get announced a bit sooner, possibly before the CEO. They're not going to make that the CEO's new first job. It's just because I think that's almost in place. So they're probably going to go get that out soon.
Yeah. So, well, I hope they get someone in place soon, and we get some more forward motion. We've got quite a lot to be done at Murrayfield and different things to be sorted out. So, fingers crossed. Yeah. So we move on to not just the weekend, but also the weekend prior, and we'll start off with something that I'm not really wanting to talk about very much, but we kind of have to because we didn't pod last week and we had no ability to talk about it. So. Edinburgh head off to Bennett and Treviso with one job to do, and that is beat them and get themselves into the playoffs. They take a fairly loaded squad, if I'm right in saying, Rory, and it was all set to go.
Don't know why you're asking me. I knew there was no pod last week, so I didn't watch it.
And, well, they took a fairly decent squad out to Bennett and they came back with their tails between their legs after being beaten 31-6 out in Treviso. Now, obviously, if anyone's listened to the podcast before, they know for a fact that I have constantly said to the absolute distaste of John Anderson that Benetton are an absolute nightmare to play against at home, and they're getting better and better when they go away as well. But a really damp squib way to end a season, Rory.
Yep, I've got the squad up now, and I do agree that, well, apart from the kind of the Edinburgh backline that you usually get, the pack was stacked. Like that's pretty much, you could say that apart from Bill Mata, that's pretty much a Scotland pack that they took over there. So yeah, that's quite a spanking. I knew that they'd got beaten, but the score had not entered my brain. I just kind of glossed over it in my mind as something that I wouldn't have to
Rory Baldwin, I told you what the score was because I was enjoying it very much.
I bet you were. Yeah. I mean, we can't even blame referee Ben Whitehouse.
No, and that's the thing. I would quite happily blame Ben Whitehouse, but unfortunately, there was nowhere to be seen with that. Properly, I'd see this point if it was a squeaky one, and we lost by 4 or 3, but to be beaten quite significantly by Treviso, it really is quite a disappointing end to the season. But Jonny, Edinburgh finishing 10th. We finished 12th last season. Surely it's an improvement and we're getting better, Jonny.
If that's how you want
8 years, you're going to win.
I'm happy to spin it that way for you if that's what you want. I don't even want to try and be horrible about them. I want to try my best to be really nice about them, but there is not a lot nice that you could say about that. They had a 91% chance of making the playoffs at the start of the weekend. And like you say, it wasn't like a squeaky one. That was a proper prison shaming. Like, you're right about Benetton. That's the thing. You are like, I'm firmly on your side. I disagree with John. I think Benetton are a really good team. They've got a couple of playoffs under their belt now. They are a serious team. They've got the core of an Italian team that's getting better and better. They've got some really good internationals they've brought in from other countries. They're not Rainbow a joke Cup team anymore. They will forever be Rainbow Cup holders. But they are like, there's not a joke team, and then there's a team with the firepower that Edinburgh has got getting a 25-point doing from them, and that is just like, there is no nice way to spin that. I'm sorry, there's just not.
It really isn't. And then, Rory, I've had a fair bit of an argument online about it, because I posted up saying that this is a coaching issue, and I'm incredibly, when Sean Everett was announced as kind of senior, maybe helping, giving everyone a leg up kind of coach, whatever he was called, I was incredibly disappointed with the SRU and what they've done. You don't give someone a year's contract who's coming all the way from South Africa just to dip his toe into a fully professional, heavy-hitting URC squad. But they've extended his contract. They're saying he's doing a good job. But lots of people online come back at me and say, don't have a go at Everett and the coaches. It's the players that need to step up. They're the ones that are causing. They're the ones that are obviously not playing for the shirt or not performing. What's your take on it, Rory? Is this a coaching issue, or is this a player issue?
You do kind of wonder. I mean, we've talked about Edinburgh being sort of directionless before, but it does, the fact that they didn't just appoint him, or appoint anyone as an actual, here's the new person in charge of the vision. It's like a trial, and it doesn't, like, I can't think of any other club that have done that, or team in the top level of professional rugby that are announcing someone for a bit as a caretaker. I mean, you get caretakers who take over when someone leaves, like mid-season or whatever, but getting the job but not really getting the job. And then you'd think that if that's the case, it would be very kind of results based, and so they've obviously seen enough to give him the contract, the full contract extension and the upgrade in title from senior coach to actual coach. I mean, you do wonder, kind of looking at a lot of the team, you're wondering if a coach is there and he can't sort of bed in a solid culture, is there enough of a kind of Edinburgh-ness to that club to kind of bind it together with the identity of the city? And in the way, I mean, even Glasgow, who are kind of piggybacking on a leisure centre, they've built a very Glasgow kind of culture and approach around that team, which kind of almost differentiates it from the kind of the Murrayfield East Coast sort of thing. And it seems to be, I mean, it's something that Edinburgh have never really had, because they've never really managed to escape that kind of Murrayfield Venn diagram. There would be, like, if it was a big circle, and then Edinburgh would be entirely within that big circle. And you just wonder with there are a lot of players who've kind of come in or come from Glasgow. I mean, Ross Thompson is an Edinburgh Edinburgh lad. So maybe guys like that coming back in will kind of inject a bit of kind of civic pride, I guess, into it. But I mean, I really rate Ben Healy, but he's not Edinburgh born and bred or anything like that. You probably don't get much of that these days in most professional rugby environments, but you kind of need one or two guys who are like that and who kind of drive that. I mean, someone like Luke Crosby, maybe, who I think is from at least that sort of side of the country. I could be completely wrong, but you need someone like that to kind of drive the identity, and I don't think they have that. And if you've got a South African coach that's come in, he's not going to do that. Someone like Mike Blair, for all his lack of experience or maybe not enjoying the role as much, had been Edinburgh pretty much all his career, so he knew what that club was, even if it, to some extent was a kind of an offshoot of Murrayfield.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Jonny, what's your take from the other side there, mate? We're looking at, I've got very, very specific views, and I'll share with them. I'll share with you later. Sorry, I'm 2 beers in, so I had to try and dull the pain a little bit. But what's your take from along there, mate? Obviously you've gone through a bit. It seemed like the SRU made do with a coach for Glasgow, and it had a very, very bad effect on Glasgow. But they've really brought in a name that maybe people kind of scratched their head and said, "Really, you're going to bring him in?" But actually, he's done a fantastic job. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, like Franco's been brilliant. There's no two ways about it. And
thanks for rubbing that in. Appreciate
a lot of Glasgow fans were disappointed after the Danny Wilson debacle, because I think we felt like we probably should have had someone bigger, someone more successful that would have been palmed off with Danny Wilson, who was, let's not beat around the bush, atrocious. And then Franco came in next, but he's been a breath of fresh air. And I think the thing that always really stands out is Glasgow squad build-wise could not be more different from Edinburgh. The Edinburgh squad has always been stacked with Scotland internationals, and it's guys like Bill Mata and stuff coming in. And the players that Glasgow have brought in haven't been huge names, and then they've gone on to be really key parts of the Scotland team, or they've brought in players who have flown under the radar from other countries. Somebody like Sione Vailanu, who's been missing for a while for Glasgow and is a monster and can't get into that back row now because of Jack Dempsey being there, Rory Darge being there, who weren't huge names when they came in. Henko Venter, who was basically nobody had ever heard of when he came in and got his first try for the club on Saturday and has had a great season. And they've just done it in such a different way. And it's like Rory says, I think there's more cohesion and more sort of a Glasgow spirit and an idea of this is how we play and this is why. That there doesn't seem to be in Edinburgh. In Edinburgh, it seems to be everyone's a huge name and everyone's going to just go out and do what they do, and it's just not coming together. I think there needs to be some sort of change there to get Edinburgh just to glue themselves together a little bit, because at the moment it's a lot of big names making not a very good team.
Yeah, sorry, on you go, Rory.
I was just going to say, I don't want to trigger Craig, but I mean, if you look at the quality of like swaps, there's been plenty of players kind of swap between both teams over the years. But it tends to be, here's a guy who's highly rated. Edinburgh somehow don't do anything with him. He goes to Glasgow and he turns into, Rory Darge. George Turner, I think, was at Edinburgh for a while, was he?
Yeah.
Whereas the ones going the other way are ones that haven't performed at Glasgow, and then they go to Edinburgh or performed a bit, but not sort of consistently, and then kind of end up down there because they're in the SRU and you have to put them somewhere. There's a sense of that.
I think it does seem to be bigger names that go from Glasgow to Edinburgh, though. Like Ali Price and Ross Thompson going this season. Now, as much as their faces maybe didn't fit for Franco, Ali Price is a Lions test scrum half, and Ross Thompson was Scotland's number 2 for quite a long time. So it's not like Glasgow are sending cast-offs. It feels like Glasgow, these players are now surplus to requirement. It's Glasgow, and it's like, let's go see if they're going to be the one that kickstarts Edinburgh. Because Edinburgh, it's big name after big name after big name, and they just cannot get it right. They can't put it together.
And this is where my big. And my statement that was online and that people were arguing with me was, you can't have these players in your roster who are playing internationally to the top of their game. For example, Duhan van der Merwe. And you can't have them day in, day out playing for an Edinburgh team who can't score a bonus point for love nor money. And turn around and say it's the player's fault. It's their fault to they're not getting themselves up enough for the game, etc., etc. That's not their responsibility. They're here. They're to be led, and you've got Grant Gilchrist and Ben Vellacott who are both captaining the side, and there's two people who will bleed for Edinburgh. Even Benji Vellacott, he seems to come across as someone who is really invigorated Edinburgh. He's a fantastic player on the park whenever he comes on. Grant Gilchrist, who will greet at any point in time that you mentioned Rugby, Edinburgh or Scotland. And, you think to yourself, hang on a minute, you can't turn around and say that both those players are leading incorrectly and they're causing problems within the team or the players won't follow them. So my natural instinct is to turn around and say, well, you look at, well, to be honest, it's a disgrace towards the fans. It's a slap in the face to the fans to bring someone over for a gap year to see if they're going to fit in. And I think it's really disrespectful to the Edinburgh fans and to the Scottish rugby fans to do that to them. And as far as I'm concerned, I think I am of the opinion that Everett is not the right fit for Edinburgh, and he never has been. And we should, I would take someone from, even if we took someone from the now defunct Super Six, you're bringing someone on. At least you can turn around and say, well, we're bringing someone from a Scottish rugby background who's going to be passionate about Scottish rugby. So
you could put someone in from an Edinburgh club because there were millions of them in the Super Six.
Well, there is, yeah, absolutely, that's very true. But yeah, I'm as you can tell, I'm pretty disillusioned and pretty angry about it still. And I just feel it's that the SRU have dropped the ball on this one. And I think, unfortunately, I do not believe that Everett is the right person for the job. But, I'm not one for people losing their jobs. I've never been like that. And I'm not a big fan of that and calling for people's heads. But I just think it's not working out for him at all. He may completely ruin me by having a great season next season. But, Duran van der Merwe and Wes Goosen, who are both on each wing, are hardly seeing the ball at the moment because they're not getting the ball out to them because they're too busy trying to run through brick walls at the moment. Because that's
when you force them to try and pull off miracles, that really works. It just gets them into trouble.
Absolutely.
For wingers,
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll move on from a rather disappointing season again for Edinburgh. And move on to the smiling Johnny McGinty's Glasgow Warriors.
See my smile come on there, as you knew we were getting into the bit.
So, Glasgow have now made the playoffs. They finished fourth in the season, although it was really a third equal with Leinster. They've also now beaten a rather, well, I wouldn't say they were a fully loaded Stormers team, but they were fairly loaded at the weekend. And they came up and they got a rather physical Glasgow side to come on and beat them at Scotstoun. So, Johnny, a really strong showing at Scotstoun. Players have really stood up to be counted, and you must be happy.
Oh yeah. The first half, I'd say, was kind of one for the purists. We were at the game, and Glasgow defended excellently. Stormers were blunt in the first half, I would say, but Glasgow defended really well. They basically did what they had to do, and I think Glasgow have had a bit of a problem this year of Glasgow do what Glasgow do, and then they're going to let the game happen around them, and sometimes they win and sometimes they lose. Whereas they kind of had the impression on Saturday night of a team that was like, let's set aside what we do, let's stop what they're going to do, and then we'll see what happens. So, like you say, physically enormous on Saturday night. some massive hits, some really solid defending, and then in a couple of really well taken chances towards the end. I don't think it was an 18-point win for Glasgow personally. I think the scoreline kind of flattered, and there was that ridiculous try at the end. But it was a good win. It was a really solid win. I don't think it covers up everything that we've been concerned about for the last couple of weeks, but it certainly was more like the Glasgow were expected to see. This Saturday night will be a different story. That's going to be a whole different game.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that certainly will. There's a whole load of baggage coming along with that one. But Rory, the view from along the M8 must be one of jealousy, a little bit of frustration, but also hopefully a little bit of, congratulations and see how you get on.
I mean, I think Scottish rugby is not quite parochial enough that at this point of the season, if there's only one team through, everyone's gonna, we're all going to be rooting for Glasgow. At least I'm sure the Edinburgh fans will be. Summing up the A9, I'm essentially neutral when it suits me. So yeah, I'm excited for the game. I think it could be potentially quite grim, but it could also be if it just turns into like battle of two rolling mauls, then yeah, it would probably be quite dull for some of us. But yeah, great effort from Glasgow. I think the first half there were some bits where you were thinking, okay, there was a couple of bits where some of those Stormers backs looked like they were just going to break through. I mean, they've got a good pedigree, and some of those forwards are monsters. But yeah, if Libbok kicks his goals, is it a slightly nervier half time and then maybe a slightly different second half? I don't know. I think I know Jonny disagrees, but I thought that Kyle Steyn was maybe lucky with his flying slap thing in the air, which was probably accidental, but he did batter the guy in the head in midair, and is this on another day something like that goes against them, and then the decision maybe affects the rest of it. I mean, they also blew that try in the first half, which would have made halftime a lot more comfortable. Glasgow, when they were sort of through on the line and the ball went over Horn's heads, when 9 times out of 10 Glasgow are finishing those. But it's knockout rugby. They're not worried about bonus points. It's just about getting the result at the end, and that's what they did. Probably having a decent kicker helped. But yeah, I think it was actually the pack fronting up, which is quite refreshing to see from a Scottish pack, to see them just battering these big South African lads. Xander putting in a humongous shift.
Yeah, Xander going up against Malherbe and people like that in the open play. It's almost like walking into or running into a brick wall, basically. So there's a lot of big collisions. I think watching it, I'm not entirely sure I would want it to be on that pitch as a front row forward. But I would enjoy the scrummaging, but I think that's about it. That's about as much as I would enjoy. Jonny, George Horn, Sebastian Cancelleri, Kyle Steyn, all looking fantastic, having seasons to die for, are they not?
Oh yeah. Like me and you will take any opportunity to talk about how great George Horn is, but the wings were brilliant. Sione was incredible again. The Hugh Pilotu axis in the midfield being back made a massive difference. I think there's not really anybody you'd point out from Glasgow on Saturday and say that they didn't play well. I'm a little concerned with Xander going 80 minutes at the rate that he did, how he's going to be come Saturday afternoon, and he will be massively important on Saturday. So I'm hoping that he's not emptied the tank just yet, but he was incredible as well on Saturday night. So a lot of great performances. I think a lot of players in Glasgow shirts on Saturday should be very pleased with their performance, because it was although it wasn't a sort of spectacular, all the bells and whistles the Glasgow backline moves that we've expected to see all season, like blow them out the water, amazing win. It was a really solid win against a really good team, and Glasgow had to do some things that they've not had to do this season, and everyone did what was expected of them and a little bit more. So, yeah, I think they should be very happy, and I'm just hoping that they've got the energy left to do it again this weekend.
Well, this is a question, and Rory, we're looking at Glasgow team who they beat Zebre but faltered a little bit. They have had a couple of brain farts, if you want to call it. Are they off the level that they're going to get A, to another final, and B, win this again? Or do you think it's a difficult journey for them?
I think getting past Munster is going to be a huge task in their own backyard. The sort of the surprise 5 tries from a rolling maul thing that they managed to pull off a year or two back. That's they're not going to fall for that one again. You're basically going to need probably most of that pack to be picked again and to deliver the same amount of effort again. So I can see why Johnny's got some concerns about the level of kind of mental and physical exertion that would have required on the weekend, and what they're essentially going to have to do again against a team that also have a psychological edge, where the Stormers probably, despite the fact that they're packed full of big top quality players and sprinkling a Springboks as well, they wouldn't necessarily have had that kind of fear of them. I'm not saying that Glasgow are necessarily scared of Munster, but there is that psychological component to this contest that isn't perhaps there with any other team that Glasgow play against, and so they've got to kind of factor that in, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And Johnny, just final, finishing up with Glasgow. They win at Munster again at Thomond Park with all the crowd against them and all the baggage that comes with Munster. Surely they've got to go all the way.
You would hope,
I think that depends on the other semi-final. This is a weird thing to be saying because I don't think we would have been saying it 12 months ago, but I don't think that Glasgow go back to Loftus Versfeld and get any different response to what they did 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think if the Bulls win that semi-final this weekend, it's, even if we get past Munster, a very tough ask for Glasgow. I think if Glasgow can beat Munster on Saturday and somehow Leinster get past the Bulls, they'll fancy their chances in the Aviva or Croke Park. I think.
Yeah.
I can't see Glasgow going down to Pretoria and winning. This will be our toughest game this weekend. This is the really tough one. If we could get through it, I don't think they go to Loftus and win, but I think if we were going to Dublin, they'd fancy their chances. I might end up eating those words spectacularly, but I think it's at the point now where both semi-finals matter for who's got a chance to win it. It's not just beating the teams in front of you; it's who can you beat next week as well.
Yeah. So,
and the annoying thing about that, the really annoying thing, is that the East Stand of Scotstoun was absolutely bouncing on Saturday night. And I know I'm beating a dead horse because I've come on and complained about this for the last 3 or 4 weeks. But if it wasn't for 15 minutes of that Lions game, these teams would be coming to Scotstoun or coming to Murrayfield in the next couple of weeks, and we wouldn't be talking about having to go to South Africa again or having to go to a sold-out Thomond Park and beat Munster. That's still, to me, a bit frustrating.
Yeah, and that's my concern for Glasgow. If I'm going to be okay, I'm an Edinburgh fan, and you can take what I say with a pinch of salt, but I think that's my only concern for Glasgow. Obviously, we want them to win. Apart from the fact that you'll be absolutely a pain in the backside to live with, Johnny. But I think you want them to win. But the issue, I think, is just this. They almost reflect Magnus Bradby's career. They go missing every so often, and that's my concern. Is that if they go missing it for 5-10 minutes against Munster, then Munster will absolutely chew them up, especially in the atmosphere that's down there. But we'll wait and see. So yeah, that's us for tonight on the Open to All pod tonight. I want to say thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for coming on and listening to us have a chat about the two Scottish teams, professional teams. We are about to go and talk about Scotland and their forthcoming North American tour, or tour of the Americas now. So if you ever want to come and join us,
Tour of the Americas.
Skyscanner Tour of the Americas. If you ever want to join us and listen to us, if you don't listen to us normally on the Patreon and you want to come and join us for the cost of 4 pineapple tarts out of I think it's let me think, Goodfellow and Stevens actually do a nice 4-pack of pineapple tarts. You can, for that a month, you can have the Patreon episodes from ourselves and some secret, super secret Facebook action as well. So at this moment, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to Jonny.
Thank you all. See you soon.
And thanks to Rory. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
And have a good night. And we'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.